Many protests have occurred in support of the Wet'suwet'en Nation in British Columbia, including a rail blockade here in Kahnawake. Local Teiaiake Gerald Alfred has ties to the Wet'suwet'en people, and we asked him to give our community some insight into who the Wet'suwet'en people are and how their traditional government works.
I think the way that we can relate to the Wet'suwet'en people is that we're both longhouse people. You know, our culture is rooted in a traditional identity and a traditional way of being that's longhouse. And so when we think about our longhouse having all these protocols, systems of government, and chiefs system, clan mothers and all that, they got that too. In their way, they call it botlats, or it's been anglicized to potlatch. And it's a clan-based governing system with the continuation of chiefs' titles through families, and each one of those chiefs' titles is connected to land. So there's their whole territory is divided up into chiefs' territories. And so it might be a lake, it might be a river system, it might be a river shed, a mountain, and each one of those territories was, back in the day, enough to sustain a family group. So you had all the fish, all the medicines, all the moose, all the deer, all that stuff that you needed, and that was the territory of a chief's house. And so when we talk about hereditary chiefs over there, we're really talking about a whole system of governing the way that land is used to sustain families. And so when they come into the feast hall, and that's what they call their governing system, like we call a longhouse. It's a feast hall. They come in carrying certain rights to land. And so the conflict that we have here now that the Wet'suwet'en are facing is that you have an outside force, a pipeline, that wants to come in and put a industrialization through an area of their territory, which is going to disturb it in the first instance and has the potential to ruin because of poison spills and oil spills and all that territories. And so they have a system of deciding on whether or not that decision is a good one and whether or not they can accept that decision. And so what happens then is that the people who are affected by that territory, it's their chief's house decision to make. And the people that are affected by that pipeline in the area that it's going through have decided that they don't want it. The problem that we're facing is because just like in our community, we've had colonization, we've had division, we've had the influence and the meddling of foreign governments, and they have been paying people, they have been enticing people, they have been dividing people using the same methods they use everywhere. And we have a system of government now that is solid at its core, but is challenged because you have all of these outside influences. And I don't give any I don't say that anybody who's for the pipeline is evil. I don't label them that way. They want to do good for their people. It's just that they're not as connected traditionally to those territories as the ones who are opposed to it. So the people who still depend on hunting and fishing and medicines and all those traditional practices for their life, and there are many of them in that territory, they're the ones who are against the pipeline, who don't want it to ruin the future ability of their kids to carry on the ways of their ancestors. The ones who tend to live more in the city or who have moved on to a more modern mentality about economy and culture, they tend not to see the pipeline as such a threat. In fact, they may see it as a good thing because it's jobs, it's money, and so forth, and that feeds their way of life. So you have a real strong question of what's the Wet'suwet'en way of life? And some people say traditional land-based culture, and some people say let's move on into the modern economy.